welcome here to the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office. We are the official representative of the Hong Kong SAR government here in New York. So if there's anything about Hong Kong, think of us as a connector and the resources for you. So this topic today, we have our guest expert speaker, Manish Bor, the co-founder and CEO of BuyHive, to bring us the latest updates on the topic of Hong Kong and the future of global sourcing. Forgive me that I have to look at my notes because I want to give you some factual information about what's happening in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong has been and continue to be an important hub in the global trade. So according to the World Trade Organization in 2023, Hong Kong's total merchandise trade with the world is more than 1,100 billion US dollars, making it the world's 10th largest trading entity in the world. So it is Hong Kong's fundamental strength that makes it how indispensable international trade hub. Well, for one, it has a level playing field for businesses, it has a rule of law, it has low and simple tax regime, free flow of capital and information, highly efficient capital markets, and a superb geographical location and world-class commercial infrastructure as well. And under the one country, two system, in case you're not familiar, Hong Kong continues to play a unique role as a super connector and super value adder between mainland China, Asia, and the rest of the world. The city has its own economic and administrative systems distinct from those of the mainland, as protected by the Basic Law. So we are a founding member of the World Trade Organization, and Hong Kong is a separate custom entity, and we may participate in relevant international organizations and trade agreements using the name of Hong Kong, China. So despite geopolitical headwinds, Hong Kong and the US have long and shared close and important economic and trade ties. The US is Hong Kong's third largest trading partner. And not many people know that Hong Kong is actually the second largest economy with the US, which enjoys trade surplus. So in addition, Hong Kong has signed 8 free trade agreements with 20 economies to date and has been actively seeking to extend its free trade agreement network in order to secure favorable conditions for Hong Kong's goods and services to enter the mainland and international markets. So the next edition will be Peru, if anybody is interested in LATAM. So where the governments have finished our respective internal procedures, and the FTA is expected to be signed very soon. So we are also signatory to 24 investment agreements with 33 foreign economies to enhance two-way investment flows and boost our economies, giving additional assurance to international investors and their investments in Hong Kong are protected. So in sum, Hong Kong is a strong supporter and facilitator of global trade and free trade. So we have a lot to offer, and our government will continue to strengthen our role as a connector between the East and West. So without further ado, may I invite Manish to the stage to join Ranjit for a fireside chat.
I wanted to welcome you, Manish, to our event. Manish is, when I was doing the research on this topic, I feel like in some respect your career has sort of mirrored what has happened in global sourcing over the last few decades. Manish, you are now the co-founder of BuyHive, which is a Hong Kong-based sourcing company. You've done long stints at Global Sources, Pico Group, Intertech. You've been in places all over the world. And now you're also sort of started up a new AI-based sourcing company as well. So you've done a lot, there's a lot going on. So I guess maybe a good place to start, Manish, is if you could just let us know, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you landed in Hong Kong and how long did you spend there?
Yes, so I had been in the sourcing industry since '99. I started in India, worked for the Tata Group, used to travel a lot in China, Korea, Japan, Taiwan, and I realized that I needed more education in international business, and that's why I ended up at Thunderbird, which is, for those that don't know, it's a school in Arizona. It was the #1 school for international business for many years. From there, I ended up at an internship in Taiwan for a textile company. Ended up going to Taiwan for that company. The company ended up then moving me to Shanghai, and in 2006 ended up in Hong Kong at Global Sources. Global Sources was a company that would provide. It was like the prequel to Alibaba. Everybody knows Alibaba, but Global Sources was a company started in Hong Kong by a gentleman from Nebraska who went to Hong Kong in 1971, started the company to provide information of suppliers to buyers. So basically sourcing information, started as a catalog company. I worked for them from 2006 to 11 in multiple different roles, but majorly trying to help Chinese exporters and Asian exporters go international, find buyers in different parts of the world. From then I was in New York 11 to 15, worked at Intertek. Intertek does testing, inspection, certification of factories, manufacturers. I managed so I was the senior director here for North America, Latin America, managing the social compliance business. For those that don't know, every factory for major retailers goes through a lot of social compliance audits to be approved for working with a Walmart or a Target or a Kmart or an Amazon. Everybody has their own requirements, and we would go in and do the third-party audits, and we are the third parties that were going to do the audits. So managed that business for North America, Latin America, and also launched a sourcing platform for them called TradeGood. Ended up with managing another company called Pico, which had sourcing operations in Europe, as well as sales operations, etc. I became the chief executive for them in London. I worked for it was a Hong Kong company. Pico is also a Hong Kong company listed in Hong Kong, but I managed the European operations. And then Global Sources wanted me back at that point of time. So our chairman then, Mr. Moll Heinrich, he said, "Okay, why don't you come back to Hong Kong? I have some exciting things for you here." So I ended up going back to Hong Kong in 2016. Worked on selling the company. Those days we were in discussions. We were Nasdaq listed, and we had about 3,500, 4,000 odd people. But Merle was ready to retire, and Merle was at that time 78 years old, and he said, "Oh, we need to get out of this and do something." So I worked on the deal to help sell the company, and we pitched to Blackstone and BlackRock and Bain and others. Finally bid between Blackstone and Bain, and we sold. We were trading at $7.5 if I'm not wrong, and we sold at $20 on the market to Blackstone. So that was a good exit. We thought it was great and it was fun, but then Blackstone came in, and I don't know how many of you guys are in PE, but basically they ripped us apart and did not follow any of the promises. So me and the CEO of the company, we decided it's about time we should get out of here. So we stayed till we thought we'll get our severance packages and then we leave. But for 2 years we stayed around, and we were not very happy because all we were doing was cutting people. Like I had about 280 people before the acquisition, and I had to bring it down to about 80 people without reasons and why we were doing it. So it was not very happy things. And then they were not letting me go. So I was like, "Oh fuck, what are you doing here?" Let me go so I can get a package. But anyways, so ended up staying there, and that was the time when we say, okay, world is changing, sourcing is changing, both from a regional perspective as well as how people do sourcing and how retail happens. So sourcing from a retail perspective is the old school way of retail was already, this is pre-COVID, and we were already seeing a big growth of e-commerce players and KOLs and others that are going to be the future of retail. Not the Walmarts and the Targets and Kmarts, but those guys that sell on Shopify, that have Amazon stores, that have eBay stores, and so on and so forth. And that's where the whole world was moving to. And those days, this is, let's say, 2020, right? So 2019. And that kind of excited us, and we said, okay, we'll create BuyHive. We were already in Hong Kong, and we thought Hong Kong is an amazing place for what we wanted to do, and that's why we created BuyHive. BuyHive is like Fiverr for sourcing. So basically what we're doing is we created a platform which has freelance sourcing professionals, procurement professionals all around the world that would go out and do the work for you rather than you having people in those markets full time on your payroll, and especially targeted at the small medium businesses, small medium sellers around the world. So that's the history till now.
This will work?
Yeah.
Yeah, finally. That's great. So in terms of, talk to us a little bit more, if you may, about Hong Kong. Like, so what has enabled Hong Kong to be such a central part of sourcing, I guess globally, but also, I guess, for what you do? And I know a lot has changed about sourcing in the world in the last few years. Where is it right now, if you can just sort of sum up in terms of Hong Kong's position?
Yeah, so historically, for those that remember, Hong Kong in 70s, 80s, 90s was the hub for garments, it was the hub for toys, it was the hub for a lot of high labor intensive industries, so let's say manufacturing industries. That then moved in the 80s, 90s, that then moved to China. But the way the movement happened is, it was the Hong Kong companies or the Hong Kong owners that went and set up companies in China. And they had the know-how, they knew how to run the companies. A lot of at that time, they were already second generation of manufacturing families that went out and said, okay, I'm going to set up manufacturing for this particular industry in different parts of China, but the headquarters will remain in Hong Kong. My trading will happen through Hong Kong, but my factory might be somewhere in GBA, that we call GBA now. It was not GBA then, or Shanghai or the East Coast, whatever manufacturing was happening. There was a lot of Hong Kong manufacturing that went there. So what that did for Hong Kong was that Hong Kong still remained, decision making was all happening in Hong Kong. The buying offices, so Target buying office or Li and Fung, that became really big in terms of the consumer product sourcing, or the Walmart sourcing office, and everybody else in the 90s all set up in Hong Kong. H&M came in that time, Zara came in that time, everybody that was manufacturing anything in consumer products, whether it be apparel or whether it be furniture or whether it be consumer electronics, everybody was setting up in Hong Kong those days. And that then slowly, and it's a transition process, but that became the important part of the industry. And I don't know what percentage of GDP it was, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was a very high percentage of Hong Kong GDP was dependent on this sector. It was even more than fintech at one point of time, or a finance industry at one point of time. And that is how the industry started there. Slowly and steadily, of course, as the manufacturing moved and as the Chinese companies became stronger and bigger and could do their own decision making or buy their own companies out, it became a China-centric play. And that again is going to change in a few years, but that's where the money and the business flew into. So we saw a transition from Hong Kong moving into China. Still, a lot of the decision making or the people that were making the decisions for the large companies were in Hong Kong. That steadily has changed also over the years, but the people that have the skill sets in terms of manufacturing or in terms of sourcing, or the people like in my industry, I am in the sourcing industry, where it is the procurement people, the sourcing professionals, the skills were all in Hong Kong. They would go and they would train the people in China. They are the ones who are going to Bangladesh. They are the ones going to Vietnam. They are the ones going to Malaysia, Singapore. They have the skill sets and they have the knowledge. And that's why Hong Kong is important. So the way I see it, in the past, Hong Kong was always seen as a gateway to China, but I see it as a gateway to all of Southeast Asia. Hong Kong is very centrally located in between all these countries. Whether you want to go to Vietnam in 3 hours, Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh is 3 hours, whether you want to go to Malaysia in 4 hours or Singapore in 5 hours, and wherever you want to go, it's pretty easy. Thailand, Indonesia, everything is 4-5 hours in flights. And that's why Hong Kong is important. And those people that worked in the sourcing industry in Hong Kong have experience working with manufacturers in those other parts of Asia. people only think of Hong Kong as China, but I think of Hong Kong as a gateway to all of Southeast Asia.
So in a world where, some of this outsourcing is going to multiple places, it sounds like you still see a role for Hong Kong to be a very central part of that, even into the coming years.
I think at least for the next 10 to 20 years, Hong Kong has a role to play, at least in the sourcing industry, right? If you see the history of manufacturing or history of sourcing, especially I'm focused on consumer goods, and that's what I'm talking about. So if you see what has happened, we used to have, a lot of manufacturing in the 50s used to happen in the US, and we had the apparel industry, etc. was here. Then it moved to Japan, then it moved to Korea, and then it moved to Taiwan and Hong Kong, and then it's moved to China. And China was just like an octopus, which sucked in everything from every industry. It sucked it in, and everybody went into China. But that transition is natural. Now the next transition is going to be from China to rest of Asia, or even the rest of the world. You could see that right now I'm working on projects where we are advising people on setting up. Chinese companies are trying to set up in Latin America. I just came back from Sao Paulo 2 days back or 3 days back, and the projects are happening in Sao Paulo. We are looking at Mexico, we're looking at Argentina, Chile, and so on and so forth. But that's a natural transition because China doesn't want some of those industries, for example, apparel manufacturing or basic consumer electronics and stuff, which are labor intensive industries. They would not want that industries there. They would want to go into the next phase, which is high tech. They want to build aeronautics, they want to do the EVs, and they want to build that industry which is more automated but adds much more value. And of course China has a labor problem. So now what is the role of Hong Kong in that is that the people that are there in Hong Kong, they have managed the Chinese factories, they have worked with Chinese factories, they have either managed them or they have bought from them or they have assisted them in growing. These are the people who have all that knowledge in their mind, and these are the people that can be employed when you are going into Thailand, that when you're going into Vietnam. Everybody talks about Vietnam. My logic is none of these, each individual countries, Vietnam, Bangladesh, or any other countries, are big enough to do an impact onto the industry that they capture. Vietnam, for example, if you look at the size of Vietnam and the number of people in Vietnam, it's less than the size of Guangdong province, right? It's nowhere comparable. What the Guangdong province can offer, which was pretty much Hong Kong controlled, you cannot get in one Vietnam. Similar in Bangladesh, similar in other countries. You don't have the capacities there. But the people in Hong Kong have the knowledge and the experience with China that they can translate into these places. So when we are hiring people also, when we are looking at people for doing things in Latin America also, we look at Hong Kong people more than anywhere else. And that's the human resource and the people that are there, the knowledge that is there is very important. And from that perspective, setting up a company in Hong Kong makes a lot of sense. And that's why we set up BuyHive in Hong Kong, because when we are doing even if we have, today we have 5,000 sourcing professionals in 20 countries, but if we have to pay people in different countries, I wouldn't be able to do it from most other countries other than if I was in Hong Kong. And that's what makes it easy.
Yeah, no, I've definitely heard. I was talking to a consultant who was visiting us a few months ago, and he was talking about the talent pool in Hong Kong for sourcing, and I think that's sort of the message you're echoing here as well. I wanted to move us on to that topic that you were, I think, bringing us to, which is technology, which is, I guess, also what you're dealing with right now. So talk to us a little bit, maybe, with your sort of crystal ball, what is happening in the world of sourcing? Where do you see it trending? And maybe if you could also talk about how the role that Hong Kong plays in that.
Yeah, so I'll give you my example rather than general, right? So which is now BuyHive is the company that I told you guys we set up in 2020. BuyHive has been profitable. We bootstrapped the company thanks to being in Hong Kong, and through the COVID phase, we bootstrapped the whole thing. And now we are doing about $5 million in revenue. We are completely profitable. We've been profitable for 3 years, but now this year will be a decent profit. And because we are bootstrapped, we don't have any investors, we don't have anybody to answer to, so I can freely travel wherever I want and do whatever I can do easily. I don't have to answer somebody because I bought a first class ticket on a flight, so, which is a great thing. But the future, the way I see about the sourcing industry is we are going to, and more of the companies are going to adapt new technologies like AI. And what I'm doing in AI, we just announced a new company about last month in Canada, sourcinggpt.ai, which is basically every task that a sourcing person does. There are a lot of I don't know how many of you guys know about the sourcing industry, but the sourcing people do such a lot of mundane tasks in the sense that they would go to first task is finding the supplier that you want to do. So let's say I want to manufacture these bottles. I will go through an Alibaba database or my previous company Global Sources database or whichever database is, right, whatever TDC database and others. It takes a lot of time. It's a huge effort because you go and then you send a message to 30, 40, 50 suppliers, then the responses come and then you coordinate back and you're just spending a lot of time. And you don't know if that supplier is actually a match to you because it's an advertising platform. Alibaba is an advertising platform. Global Sources is an advertising platform. Every country has an advertising platform which does the sourcing. So you're spending a lot of time. So that is task one. Let's say it's about 50 to 60 man hours if you total it out per SKU that a person spends on just identifying which are the 4 or 5 suppliers that I can work with or that are suitable for me. Like it's dating, right? You don't know which are you go through one of those apps and you're going through 50, 60 people before you say, oh, these 3, 4 I can probably date. That's even worse in this because you're spending you're going to be buying worth of millions of dollars. And it's a lot of risk involved. And with AI, what we can do today is we can filter out through all that riffraff and we can say these, because of your specific requirements of quality, quantity, compliance, etc., whatever your requirements are, these are the 4 or 5 that look suitable. And I don't have to just look at one database because with AI, I can look through TDC database and Global Sources database and Alibaba database and the customs database in a few seconds and say, okay, because now these were all advertisers on these platforms, but I also can look at the customs data and say, this makes sense. This is already done this kind of work. I can say, okay, this supplier is suitable. These 4 or 5 suppliers are suitable. So that task that took 60 man hours is done by this in a few seconds. The other thing you do is, you found these 4 or 5 suppliers, now you send out RFQs. Most of the people don't know what an RFQ is, and most of the small, medium-sized companies don't even have an RFQ process in place. An RFQ is a request for quotation. So you have to format it, you have to template it, you have to do it properly so that it makes sense when the responses come. Spend a lot of time. So you can template this and the AI will template for you based on what your SKU is. So if your SKU is a bottle, it's a different one. It's a furniture, it's a different one. It's an apparel, it's a different one, but it will format it for your requirement. And send it out on your behalf through your mailbox. It's connected to it's a SaaS, so it's connected through your mailbox. It does all the work. When the responses come, again, you could be spending 30, 40 man hours collating all that information. This will collate that also for you. Then it is calculating landed costs. Okay, you found a manufacturer in Vietnam or in China and you want to manufacture you want to ship it to Atlanta and you don't know what the landed cost is, what is the Trump duties on that, what is the duties on that and all that stuff. So you are confused, what is it? It's costing me $1, but the landed cost is going to be 1.8. You don't know if that is 1.8 or 2.8, whatever, but the AI can tell you very quickly because the AI can pull data from different places. That's what the other stuff we can do. And then there are many other such mundane tasks that the merchandiser does in the industry that we will be able to do for them with the AI. And that's where the sourcing industry is going to move into. We are doing this part of it. There'll be other people that will be doing the logistics part of it. There'll be people that will be doing the design part of it. I already talked to a lot of people who are doing like prototyping, and they're doing different works, different parts of the sourcing supply chain which they're able to do and cut out time using AI. And that's where the future is going to go into, the way I see it.
So it sounds, how many years away is that? Is that right here, right now?
I think we are right here, right now. We have probably, as we speak, there might be things that are coming.
Sounds good. I want to leave plenty of time for discussions and networking, but one last question. If you could share us your experiences just living in Hong Kong and working in Hong Kong, how's that been for you?
Yeah, I lived in Hong Kong 11 years in total, 2006 to 11 and then 16 to 21. And it's been amazing. I met my wife in Hong Kong, I had my child in Hong Kong, so it's of course close to me. And then of course my mother-in-law, father-in-law, everybody lives there. So it's home for me. So I may be biased in some ways. But that apart, in terms of business, I have worked in multiple cities. I have done business in multiple cities. I have traveled in about 65 odd countries, and I have done business with at least 50 odd countries. And the ease and the efficiency of Hong Kong is unbeatable. I was just telling somebody earlier that I moved from Hong Kong to New York. So I moved from Arizona to California to Taiwan, and then from Taiwan I moved to Hong Kong. And I felt like when I moved from Taiwan to Hong Kong, it's like, oh, it's so fast. It's like everything is running. But then I moved from Hong Kong to New York, and I was like, oh, everything is so slow here. This is really slow. It's inefficient. And then I moved from New York to London, and I was like, oh, where am I here? What am I doing in London? London is inefficient. And then I moved back to Hong Kong and said, oh, this is right. This feels my pace. Now I spend a lot of time in China, in Shanghai. I live in Shanghai and Hong Kong. And I feel the same way, that the Hong Kong efficiency and the basic stuff, right? You setting up a business, like you guys help a lot of people set up a business. BuyHive, we literally set up in 1.5 days. We did not spend more than 1.5 days to set up the company, the bank account. Everything was done pretty much 1.5, 2 days in which we set up the company, and Hong Kong IDs done. So we hired some people from outside, getting their immigration done. All those processes were so simple and so easy. It makes life easy because you don't have to deal with it. So the importance of that is, those are not the things that are taking your management time. Those are not wasting your time in ways that other places do. And I've done that managing people in New York, as I said. I worked in London. I managed teams in Mexico. I managed teams in China, and nowhere else is that efficiency that Hong Kong provides. Singapore probably is the closest competitor that says it provides it, but I don't have personal experience, so I can't talk about that.
Thank you, Manish. At this point, I wanted to open it up to questions. Anyone? Yes, please.
Good evening, great panel. Thanks for the talk. My name is Tristan Zhang. I'm the managing partner for Cosmos British Capital. Just two very quick questions. The first one is, out of your platform, how many % of the business is coming out of China in terms of the manufacturers and suppliers, and how many % is coming out of Southeast Asia? And that's the first question. Second question is, well, is there a sweet spot MOQ that you work with, which makes the business platform very efficient and very profitable for you guys?
Yes, for the first question, so it is about the sourcing professionals. So actually, the largest number of sourcing professionals we have is not from China. It's actually from India and Vietnam, then Bangladesh, and then China, and then Hong Kong. So that part, we have the sourcing professionals there. In terms of MOQs, pretty much depends on the SKU, but we are not dealing in like 1 piece, 2 piece, 10 piece, not the 1688 model, right? We are dealing in, for example, at least a minimum order of, the minimum orders that go through the platform are 50 to 60,000 US dollars.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
How is the manufacturing industry addressing certain environmental concerns? And do you see any trends?
What do you mean by environment?
So I'm assuming that in certain parts of sourcing, right, people have asked for products that are created in a greener way. So I wonder how that might have impacted it.
So again, depends on SKU to SKU. But actually, I would say that if you are really looking for greener products, China is doing a great job at that as compared to anywhere else. And if you're willing to pay the price, the problem is the buyers who say that I want, I have dealt with many of those, they say that I want environment friendly product and I want a ESG certified factory, blah, blah, blah. But when they hear the price, it's no, not the, I will not pay that price for that. But everything comes at a price. If you want an ESG certified factory, they have to go through certain processes. If you want them to be environment friendly in their product usage, then you need to pay for the environment friendly raw materials. You cannot expect it to be at the same price as the regular product. And you need to, then that's where it is. But to answer your question, I think no other country than China today can produce, at least in the consumer product sector, as good environment friendly products as anywhere else.
Okay, and two follow-up questions, if possible. What's the difference in price, and then what are sort of the technologies used to create like higher sustainability environment?
Yeah, so in terms of the pricing, it's varies, right, by SKU. I mean, for example, apparel wise, right? Apparel, the price difference might be 20-25%, but plastic products, the difference might be 50%. Like so one of our clients we deal with is Sprouts Farmers Market. I don't know if you know Sprouts Farmers Market. They're a $6.5 billion company, and we help them find the suppliers for their shopping bags, and they wanted the environment friendly. They were buying in China, somewhere in through a distributor in US. They were buying the product at say 45 cents a bag, right? And there's whatever they're retailing at, but we were able to find them at 48 cents, but completely environment friendly. The 45 cents was not an environment friendly. The reason for that was, okay, they said, okay, we are flexible to pay a little bit more, but we can't pay more, but we are flexible in the raw material, where it comes from, etc., etc. So you have to re-engineer it, and you have to look at everything in detail and see that. So that's the part in the terms of the pricing. The pricing can be 10%, 15%, 20%, 30%, depends what it is. But the way to play around it is also because the way duty structures are very complicated in certain product categories. And when there are environment friendly products, maybe they don't attract the Trump tax. The Trump tax today from China, most of the products, or from Asia, is 25%. Right? If there is a China component in there, the 25% Trump tax on most of the products. So that can be avoided. Second question, I forgot.
Technologies as far as the environment, from like changing dye formulation.
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of technologies, again, China is at the forefront of all kinds of technology developments. China is the one exporting the technologies to Mexico, to Vietnam, to Turkey, to India, wherever the manufacturing is happening. So China is still the leader in terms of the technology. Actually, China is focused on, like I was saying, they want the high tech and they want the high value stuff. So they're moving their industry into not the manufacturing. They don't want to do the material, like not make the apparel. They want to make the material that will be sold.
We'll take one last question before we get to the food, please.
Oh, is it me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, hi, Unesh. I'm Victoria, and I am a content creator in the US, and I also had a community organization that's called Asian Creatives Club. So, like, we basically want to attract international Asian creatives in the US market and also build the global brands and IPs. And I feel like that's going to be the next step for this entire, like, the Chinese market. Because I was born and raised in China, but I went to the US for college. So I feel like as you talk about the sourcing industry, and it's very like before it's all about sourcing manufactured goods, and now like Temu is coming into the US market, and they're basically taking over all the little factories in China, and then like helping them using their powerful platforms, and how does that will impact like your business, and how do you think you guys are competitors, or like what is the situation?
No, so for example, Temu or Shein, for example, right? They're building their own systems. But who are they competing with? They're competing with Shopify. They're competing with Amazon. They're competing with whichever other platforms that are there in that space, right? Big Commerce and WCommerce and all these others, right? So we don't need to worry about just what Temu is doing, right? Temu and Shein have their different business model. TikTok has its own business model. And everybody will work in a different way, but there at the same time there is other retailers that need us. And if you see the market share today of the others, it's almost 97% of the market, and that's what we are focused on.
Thank you. I think we should stop and just get everybody off to the food.
We can get
so-
Marty's last question.
Yeah. All right. Maybe Marty, if you could make it quick. Thank you.
Thank you, Manish. Thanks for the presentation. You rightly pointed out earlier in terms of Hong Kong's historic emphasis in the global economy, in terms of sourcing, as well as in terms of finance. You also reference technology in terms of, especially in terms of AI, in terms of the actual enhancing or facilitating the sourcing element. Having spent substantial amount of my career in terms of commercial banking in Hong Kong and other parts of Asia, I appreciate the issues concerned with cross-border trade and the financing of that, and the amount of fraud that's involved in these types of transactions. Close to 10% of cross-border transactions are fraudulent transactions and documentation. To what degree do you see technology being able to, and to the degree that BiHive can bring this in and help Hong Kong in terms of bridging these two elements of finance and sourcing together?
Yeah, I mean, so as we build the AI part of it, right, the byproduct of that is going to be more transparency both on the buyer side and the manufacturer side. Transparency that is gathered by sourcing experts, but transparency that is also gathered by AI, because the AI is learning from different parts. So let's say, to cite an example, we would think of, okay, factory ABC has done fraud in the past. When we normally do the due diligence, right, I might be seeing his other company, XYZ, that he's set up, and I have no idea the relationship with ABC, because there's so much data that I have to go through before I come to that. But with an AI tool which looks at, cross-verifies the data, it looks at the data in customs, it is looking at the data on those websites, it's looking at the data in the registered information database, right, which it has access to. It can quickly point out that there is a risk factor involvement. And once we build it and we learn more, as the AI develops and as the LLMs learn more, it can go to that stage. It will not start with that. It will not, I'm not saying in the day one that's the focus. Day one, the focus is get the trade out. But then as we learn more, it's going to be able to do that as well.
Thank you.